Hi, it's Glenn from Alderspring. And I'm here in a beautiful timber stand. That's one of my favorite types. It's the Aspen forest. And I'm here in a place called Big Hat, which is a tributary to Main Hat Creek. And it's this valley, this perch valley. I'm sitting around 7,000 feet here. And I'm actually scoping out where we're going to put our cattle next. But I stumbled across some interesting phenomena out here in Big Hat Creek. And I want to show you and introduce you to some of the stuff that's happening around here. First of all, you can see here in the back all this dead and decaying aspen laying down. And I know it's aspen because it's got kind of a wavy trunk to it. You can see those waves. Douglas fir, which is the other tree here along with lodgepole pine, both lay pretty straight. And you can see that the overstory here is largely Douglas fir. But what's interesting is that the reason the aspen's laying down is because Douglas fir encroached on it for the most part through this area and took over the stand. It's just forest succession in the absence of fire. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Fire is actually a good thing for the aspen. Here's a beautiful little aspen leaf right here. The Latin name for it is Populus tremuloides. And the reason is because it's a poplar and it likes to tremble. We also call them quaking aspens. Some of the old timers call them quakies. But these are healthy young aspen here that are coming up. And that's why I'm excited about what's going on here. Because up till recently, these young aspen couldn't come in. You see, let me tell you the whole picture. Behind me here, you can see some trees that are still standing. Those big white bark trees are aspen, but their bark is falling off. And it's because aspen throughout the American West pretty much even age in stature, and it's just because of fire suppression. Fire suppression started occurring around 1900. Smokey the Bear was introduced soon after, around 1910, and he kind of took over the American vision of forests and caused us to go out there and put out every fire. Whereas these forests have a prehistory of having a fire interval of every 45 years on average. And I know that because I used to be a forester in this country, and I've increment bored many trees around here to find that the fire frequency indeed is every 45 years. And that I find that out because there's a scar inside on the tree ring count. You'll actually see fire scars about every 40 years. A lot of these fires were set by Native Americans, and a lot of them by lightning. Lightning is very common in these parts without the accompanying rain that you see in most parts of the country. Well, anyway, what happened was that these trees all grew up since the last fires around 1850 and 1900. So very even age with no interruption from then on. So they were able to live a very healthy, happy life here, dominating forests of the West. In fact, you probably have seen those stereotypical photos of huge stands of aspen in the Colorado Rockies. Unfortunately, they are in the same plight that ours are here, and they're all dying. And it's because aspen don't really like to live over 100, 120 years. It's because what happened, and I can show you over here on some of these, is that their bark is very thin and very susceptible to fungal infestations like the hypoxylon canker. And subsequent to that, we have many insects that like to live here. Here you can see deposits of frass, which are insect sawdust. Frass is a nice way of saying insect crap. And so these are secondary things that move in to aspen after it's already on the way out. But what really gets aspen is because of its thin bark nature, it starts cracking like this. You can see little cracks here and cracks up here, and they let fungal infestations come in as the trees get very big. Very typical for them to split. Also, at this time of life, you can see on this tree over here, that's probably elk damage from several years ago. Elk like to rub on them and shine their antlers, and repeated years of elk damage again introduce fungal infections. And then other things like aspen leaf miner become secondary causes for aspen mortality, and eventually aspen succumb and become much like this we see here. just dead trees on the forest floor, and they all fall down. In the absence of fire, this is what happens. With fire, the trees, because they're thin bark, also succumb. But what happens is you'll have a carpet of even-age aspen take off and regenerate, because aspen continue to live despite the tree dying above in their roots. Many scientists postulate that aspen are among the oldest living things on Earth. They long thought redwood and sequoia were, but it turns out aspen can live over 10,000 years. And it's because they stay alive underground for a very long time, but not when a conifer overstory takes it over. As a result, we're concerned about aspen because we have this thing called conifer encroachment in the absence of fire, because we suppress all these wildfires in the West. And as a result, we're losing a lot of our aspen stands. So we're really, really cautious about trying to regenerate our aspen stands. But there's a problem with aspen regeneration, and it's called grazing. Grazing, yes, I said grazing. And here you can see an example of grazing. Getting down here on the floor of the forest, you see this little tiny aspen here, and I would guess that this aspen could be about 50 years old. And it's because I can see over and over and over again where it's been grazed. And a lot of it was cattle grazing, but currently there's elk grazing that's going on here, because the way we've been managing it with our cattle here, I know positively we haven't had a cow in here for 6 years. So the elk have been working this over, and it's because there's not a lot of young aspen. Again, we got a conifer encroachment issue. So it's a big deal for me to try to keep Alderspring cattle out of aspen stands, because the elk are already doing some damage. If we add our cows to it, it won't have a chance. So I want to show you this over here. Now, it's been 6 years, and what's interesting with this little stand right here is you can see all these big aspen trees all through here, but you can also see a ton of aspen regeneration, and it's all getting to be around my height, and that's a wonderful thing. There's some more over here, and I'm seeing this all over the places where we've been grazing with our very controlled technique of called inherding, where we actually very carefully control every animal on the Hat Creek allotment and know where every one of them is. We keep them in a closed herd, and one of our objectives here ecologically has been to keep them out of aspens so that they can regenerate. And here you can see tons and tons of aspen below me that are 6 feet or higher, and 6 feet or higher is a key deal, because my cattle won't graze them when they become 6 feet or higher and they're finally free. Sure, they might get browsed by elk a little bit, but these aspen are finally free to go. And instead of seeing all this dead down aspen material like we see stacked up all over the place, in another 30 years, we're going to see those beautiful white bark trees again dominate this part of the landscape, despite the fact that we have a fire suppression regime in the overall management in national forests. But we're doing our part to get at least a little bit of aspen regeneration back. And it may be only 5%, 10% of our total country up here on the Hat Creek allotment, whereas it used to be more like 60 or 70% coverage, but still 5 to 10% of 46,000 acres. That's a lot of country. That's 4,600 acres aspen that we could potentially regenerate by just controlling our grazing. And as a result, we're going to have a great new habitat component. Habitat diversity is key to the national forests of the United States. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of monocultures develop because of the lack of disturbance through fire, through bison grazing, those kind of things that happen prehistorically. But what we can do is control our cattle so that we regenerate these stands, and then we can come back and we can graze them again and keep the bottoms open and let those aspen regenerate like crazy. So anyway, I'm going to sign off now, but I just want you to envision, as I take a spin through here, all those big white bark trees. Used to be a beautiful aspen gallery in here. And you know what? Because we're controlling our cattle, it's going to happen again. Thanks for watching.